Hi, and thanks for joining me with my loan modification video. This video is designed to give you general information on the loan modification process. Again, it's just general information. My information is based off of discussions and information I've acquired over the past several months in dealing with clients and potential clients that have both tried and unsuccessfully and tried and successfully obtained loan modifications. A loan modification is just that, a modification of your current mortgage. In order to get a modification, you need to qualify. When you submit your information for a loan modification, you are essentially qualifying for the new loan. Before you submit your loan modification information to your lender, you want to make sure you have all your financial information taken care of. If you're self-employed, you want to make sure you have accurate profit and loss information. It's essentially the same process as you went through when you got your loan initially. The lender will require you to show proof that you can afford the modified payment. A modification is a great option if you can qualify and if the lien holder will approve your mortgage to reduce your mortgage payment. That being said, my experience has shown there is a very small percentage of loan modification applications that actually get approved. Loan modifications can be very, very challenging. I have found that most of my clients have had better success with loan modifications by hiring a loan modification attorney. Generally, if you do this, it's going to run you between $2,500 and $4,000. That is just a general rule of thumb. There are also modification companies that I have seen advertised. I haven't had any personal experience with clients that have had successful modifications hiring one of these companies, but I have had clients that have had success with attorneys. That being said, there are people, I'm sure, that are having success with some of these non-attorney loan modification companies. But you really want to be careful that you're talking to someone, and if you're going to pay money, that it's someone that's getting results. If you're going to consider hiring someone, you want to ask them about their ratios. How many modifications are they doing? How many modifications are in the trial period? And how many modifications have been finalized? My experience and research has shown somewhere around 10 to 13% of loan modifications that are submitted get approved. Now that is not any sort of number that has any sort of reference that I can give you that's statistical or that I could provide you with documentation, but the general rule of thumb that I've found is about 10 to 13%. So again, it's a small number, but if you can modify and you do want to stay in your home, it's a good option. You will want to communicate with your lender immediately if you are considering a loan modification. Some lenders will advise you that you cannot or they will not modify unless you're behind in your mortgage payment. And if that's the case, that's something you really need to decide, because once you are behind on your mortgage, that does ding your credit. In addition, once you're behind on your mortgage, if you get too far behind, then you do run the risk of foreclosure. I have heard of experiences where lenders have told potential clients that are looking to modify that they needed to be behind, so they've been behind because they've been applying for the loan modification, and then they've gotten 90, 120, 180 days behind. The loan modification hasn't been completed or approved, and then they've received a foreclosure notice and notice of default. So you have to be very, very, very careful. In addition, please remember that if you do not make your mortgage payments, you will get a negative credit rating. So this is something to consider. Also, loan modifications typically won't be approved if you are in a non-owner occupied property, which means that if you don't live there, most lenders are not willing to review loan modifications. Now again, this is just generalized information, so every situation is specific. When you submit your loan modification, you will submit your hardship letter, your financials, you'll also have to submit tax returns, and you'll probably have to submit specific individual documentation for your situation. If you do choose to try and apply for a loan modification without hiring a professional, you want to make sure that you are on top of it, and you want to make sure if you do hire someone that they are on top of the file. Lenders right now are inundated with thousands and thousands and thousands of loan modification applications every day. So you want to make sure that whether you or if you've hired a professional, your professional is contacting the lien holder to make sure that your documentation is being correctly processed and that the lien holder does not need any other documentation. In addition, if you are behind on your payments, please note that once your payments are 90 days behind, then the lien holder can file a notice of default, regardless of whether or not you are applying for a loan modification. So this is something important to be aware of. I have heard of situations where people have filed for or tried to apply for a loan modification. They've gotten so far behind, the foreclosure process has started, and they've lost their homes. So you really need to be careful and be sure of what you're doing so that you don't find yourself in that situation. In addition, again, you'll want to make sure that you can qualify and have proof that you can qualify for the loan modification. There are several different loan modification types. One is the HAMP program. That is what is commonly called the Obama Modification Program. This is the federally sponsored program, and this program has had limited success nationwide. There are also personal or private loan modification programs with investors. One thing you'll also want to consider when you're modifying is if the property is something you're going to be able to keep even with the modified payment. Oftentimes I've talked to clients and potential clients that have tried to modify payments and then they've realized that they just flat out are not going to be able to keep the property. I hope this information has been found helpful, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I'm happy to provide you with objective advice. I do not personally process loan modifications, but I do have quite a bit of experience and would be happy to provide you with advice on your current and individualized situation. Thanks for viewing, and I hope you have a great day.